"Get up, you worthless squaw!" John's slurred voice echoed through the cramped wooden house, his fist slamming against the wall. The moonlight barely pierced the dusty windows of their home in the Cherokee Reservation. Oklahoma, 1910, casting jagged shadows as Awinita cowered, shielding her two small children. Nayeli and Tayanita from their father's rage. In a moment of desperate defiance, Awinita shoved John to protect her sobbing daughters, and he stumbled backward, crashing to the floor motionless. Her heart pounded like a war drum as she stared at his still body, fear clawing at her throat. Had she killed him? With no time to think, she grabbed Nayeli's hand, scooped Tayanita into her arms, and fled into the cold, dark forest, her bare feet sinking into the damp earth. Word of the incident spread like wildfire, and the local authorities, quick to side with a white man, issued a warrant for Awinita's arrest, branding her a dangerous Cherokee fugitive. Now, with the howls of hunting dogs echoing in the distance, Awinita faced a heart-wrenching choice: surrender and risk losing her children forever to a system that favored John, or keep running, knowing the forest offered little hope of survival. A single tear rolled down Awinita's cheek as she stitched a torn dress under the dim glow of a kerosene lamp, her fingers trembling, not from the cold, but from the weight of her life. At 25. Awinita, a Cherokee woman, lived in a world that seemed to reject her at every turn. Her days were spent as a seamstress, threading needles to earn meager coins to feed her daughters. Nayeli 8 and Tayanita 4 in their small, drafty home on the Oklahoma reservation, but home was no sanctuary. Her husband John, a white man working for the local government, turned their nights into nightmares with his drunken fists and cruel words. Each bruise on Awinita's skin was a reminder of her trapped existence, caught between two worlds. The white community despised her for her Cherokee blood, spitting slurs when she passed through town, while some Cherokees whispered that she'd betrayed her people by marrying John. Her heart ached to give her daughters a better life, one free from fear and hunger, but the law built to protect men like John loomed over her like a vulture. If she dared leave him, she knew the courts could strip her children away, claiming a Cherokee mother unfit. Awinita's dreams of escape were tethered by this suffocating reality. Her love for Nayeli and Tayanita, the only light in a life shadowed by violence, prejudice, and poverty. "Don't look back," Awinita whispered to herself, her hands shaking as she stuffed a few worn dresses and a stale loaf of bread into a tattered cloth sack. Her heart raced the image of John's limp body on the floor, searing her mind. She scooped up Tayanita, her 4-year-old daughter, the girl's small frame trembling against her chest, and grabbed Nayeli's hand, pulling the 8-year-old toward the door. The wind howled outside, rattling the trees like angry spirits, sending chills down Awinita's spine as they stumbled into the dark forest. She glanced back at the house, its crooked silhouette looming under the moon, half expecting John to stagger out, his fists raised. Nayeli's voice broke the silence, small and scared. "Mama, where are we going?" The question choked Awinita, tears stinging her eyes, but she squeezed her daughter's hand tighter, unable to answer. She spotted a narrow trail winding through the trees and led them down it, her bare feet sinking into the cold, wet earth. Under her breath, she prayed to the Cherokee ancestors, begging for protection. A distant bark, sharp and hungry, pierced the night, making her heart lurch. She urged her girls to move faster, fear driving her deeper into the unknown. The town square buzzed with fury as Sheriff Malone's boots thudded against the wooden porch of the jailhouse. "We got a fugitive," he bellowed, rallying a ragtag group of townsfolk armed with rifles and lanterns. John, still unconscious, had been carted to the hospital, his head bloodied from the fall. Malone spread the word fast. Awinita, the Cherokee woman, was a dangerous attacker. Her name spat like a curse. White townsfolk gathered their voices, rising in a chorus of outrage, demanding her head for daring to strike a white man. In the shadows, a young Cherokee man overheard the commotion and slipped away, racing to warn his community on the reservation. Malone, his face hard as stone, ordered his men to comb the forest near the Cherokee land, their dogs straining at their leashes. A grizzled bounty hunter, eyes glinting with greed, stepped forward, volunteering for the hunt, lured by the promise of a fat reward. Word of the chaos reached William Baxter, the land baron who ruled the town like a king, his lips curling into a cold smile as he sat in his lavish office, already plotting how to turn this scandal to his advantage. The hunt was on, and the forest would show no mercy. Awinita huddled in a small clearing, her arms wrapped tightly around Nayeli and Tayanita, their breaths visible in the chilly air. Her mind replayed John's attacks, each blow a weight on her soul, and guilt gnawed at her for dragging her children into this nightmare. Tayanita shivered, her tiny body cold against Awinita's side, and panic surged in her chest. What if they froze out here? She wondered if the law would brand her a murderer, her name forever stained. A rustle in the bushes snapped her to attention, her hand instinctively clutching a sharp stone, ready to fight. To calm her daughters, she whispered a Cherokee story about a brave woman who outwitted a wolf, her voice soft but trembling. Nayeli's wide eyes locked on her, seeking comfort. While Tayanita nestled closer, her shivers easing, Awinita looked up at the starless sky, the vast darkness swallowing her hope, and silently begged for a way out. The forest felt like a trap, its shadows hiding dangers she couldn't see, but her love for her girls burned brighter than her fear, anchoring her to the fight ahead. A shadow moved in the trees, and Awinita's heart stopped. She clutched her small knife, its blade glinting faintly in the moonlight, ready to protect Nayeli and Tayanita, who clung to her in the dark forest. A man stepped forward, his hands raised in peace, his weathered face marked by scars. "I'm Tsegi Cherokee," he said, his voice low but steady. Awinita recognized him. A lone warrior from the reservation whispered about in hushed tones. He explained he lived hidden, fleeing the white man's law, and offered to lead them to a safe cave nearby. Awinita hesitated, her eyes scanning his face for deceit, but Tayanita's quiet whimper pushed her to trust him. Tsegi lit a small oil lamp, its warm glow cutting through the night, and guided them through twisting paths. The forest seemed to watch its silence, heavy with secrets. Awinita's fear battled her hope as she followed Nayeli's hand tight in hers. Tsegi's calm presence felt like a lifeline, but doubt lingered. What if he betrayed them? She whispered a prayer to her ancestors, asking for guidance, her heart torn between survival and suspicion. In this desperate flight from danger, the cave's damp walls flickered under Tsegi's small fire, casting shadows that danced like ghosts. Awinita sat close to Nayeli and Tayanita, their tired eyes watching Tsegi as he spoke. He shared his story, his voice heavy with pain, recounting battles against white soldiers who stole Cherokee land. He lost his wife and son in a massacre, their names carved into his heart. Awinita's chest tightened her own losses. Echoing his, he warned her about William Baxter, the land baron whose greed crushed their people. His name, a curse on the reservation. Nayeli, curious, asked about their ancestors, her voice small but brave. Tsegi smiled faintly and taught Awinita a Cherokee song, its melody soft and mournful, lifting their spirits. Awinita felt a flicker of comfort, his words wrapping around her like a warm blanket, but worry gnawed at her. Could they trust this stranger? The fire crackled, and she hugged her daughters closer, their warmth grounding her. Tsegi's pain mirrored her own, forging a fragile bond. She thanked him quietly, her voice trembling, knowing they needed each other to survive. The cave felt safer, but the world outside still hunted her. Barks shattered the silence sharp and close, making Awinita's blood run cold. The hunting dogs were near their howls, slicing through the cave's quiet. She pulled Nayeli and Tayanita close, her heart pounding like a drum, their wide eyes reflecting her fear. Tsegi crept to the cave's entrance, his face grim as he spotted fresh boot prints in the mud outside. He signaled for silence, his finger pressed to his lips, and Awinita nodded her breath. Shallow. A bounty hunter's shadow loomed near the entrance, his lantern casting a sickly glow. Awinita's hand shook, clutching her girls, praying they wouldn't cry. Tsegi grabbed a stone and tossed it far into the bushes, the noise pulling the hunter away. His curses fading into the night, Awinita's body trembled, relief mixing with terror. They were safe for now, but the dog's distant barks promised more danger. Nayeli gripped her mother's hand, her small fingers steady, despite her fear, refusing to let tears fall. Awinita whispered thanks to her ancestors, but the cave felt like a trap, closing in. The hunt was relentless, and every second pushed them closer to capture or death. Nayeli's arms wrapped around Awinita, small but fierce as they sat in the cave's dim light. "You're the strongest person, Mama," she whispered, her voice cutting through Awinita's despair. Exhausted, Awinita slumped against the cold stone, the weight of their escape crushing her. Nayeli's words sparked a warmth in her chest, and she managed a weak smile, brushing a tear from her daughter's cheek. To soothe Tayanita, who stirred restlessly, Awinita told a Cherokee tale of a woman who outran the wind, her voice soft and steady. Nayeli offered to keep watch, her bravery piercing Awinita's heart. The love in her daughter's eyes reignited her will to fight like a fire kindled from dying embers. Awinita kissed their foreheads, promising silently to protect them no matter the cost. The cave's shadows seemed less menacing. Now softened by Nayeli's courage, Awinita felt a surge of determination, vowing to find a way out of this nightmare. She hugged her girls tightly, their warmth anchoring her. For them, she would face the forest, the hunters, and even Baxter himself. Their love was her strength, and she wouldn't let it fade. Tsegi crouched by the fire, scratching a rough map into the dirt with a stick. "There's a Cherokee village far from here," he said, his voice firm, pointing to a winding path. Awinita listened, her stomach twisting at the thought of a long journey with 2 young children. Tsegi promised to guard them, his eyes steady, but she saw the worry in his frown. He checked their supplies, cursing under his breath at the meager scraps of bread left. Awinita suggested foraging for herbs to stretch their food. Her voice quiet but resolute, they agreed to leave at dawn when the forest was still cloaked in mist. To lift their spirits, Tsegi shared a story of a Cherokee warrior who defeated a giant bear, his words painting courage in the air. Awinita nodded, her heart heavy but determined. The map in the dirt was their lifeline, a fragile hope against the hunters closing in. She glanced at Nayeli and Tayanita sleeping fitfully and felt a fierce resolve. They would move forward step by step, no matter the danger. The forest awaited, but so did their chance at freedom. A young Cherokee man's voice broke the cave's silence. John's awake. He called his words, hitting Awinita like a thunderclap. Crouched by the fire, she froze, her breath catching as he explained that John had woken in the hospital, accusing her of trying to kill him. Her stomach churned, the hope of proving her innocence crumbling. She'd thought his silence might give her a chance, but now the law would hunt her harder, branding her a murderer. Tsegi knelt beside her, his voice calm but firm, saying, "John's lies were just another way to chain her, Nayeli." Small voice trembled, asking if her father would come to take them away. Awinita pulled her daughters close, their warmth steadying her shaking hands, and swore John would never touch them again. The weight of her tarnished name pressed on her chest, her honor dragged through the mud of the town's gossip. She stared into the fire, its flames blurring through her tears, feeling the world closing in. Yet her daughter's trust sparked a flicker of defiance. She wouldn't let John's lies define her. Awinita whispered a vow to fight her heart, heavy but unbroken, determined to protect her family at all costs. Awinita sat alone in the cave's shadows, her mind wrestling with a desperate thought: surrender. Maybe turning herself in could clear her name, prove she hadn't meant to hurt John. But Tsegi's warning cut through her haze, his voice sharp as he reminded her the law always sided with white men. Like John Awinita's, memories flooded back, John's threats to take Nayeli and Tayanita, his cruel laughter as he said no court would trust a Cherokee woman. Nayeli, sensing her mother's struggle, began to cry, her voice breaking as she begged, "Don't go back, Mama." Her daughter's tears pierced Awinita's heart, and she looked at her girls, their small faces full of fear and love. That love anchored her. She decided to keep running to fight for their future, no matter the cost. Under the cave's low ceiling, she prayed to her Cherokee ancestors, her voice a soft plea for strength. Tsegi nodded, his eyes grim but resolute, agreeing to guide them despite the dangers ahead. Awinita stood wiping her tears, her choice made. The path was perilous, but her daughters were worth every risk, and she'd face the forest's terrors to keep them safe. The forest glowed faintly as dawn broke, and Awinita led her small group forward, her steps heavy with exhaustion. They followed a shallow stream, avoiding the main trails where hunters might lurk, the waters gurgle, masking their footsteps. Tayanita, weary and quiet, clung to Awinita's arms, her weight a constant ache in her mother's shoulders. Tsegi walked ahead, showing Nayeli how to spot animal tracks in the mud, his patient voice a small comfort. A sudden rain poured down, soaking their clothes and chilling their bones, turning the path to mud. Awinita tore broad leaves from a tree, holding them over her daughters to shield them from the downpour. They found shelter under a thick canopy of trees, collapsing in the damp grass to rest. The sweet trill of a bird broke through the rain's patter, and for a moment Awinita's fear eased the sound, reminding her of her mother's songs. She hugged Nayeli and Tayanita, their shivering bodies warming her heart. The journey was grueling, but each step took them farther from John's reach. Awinita breathed deeply, drawing strength from the forest's quiet beauty, determined to keep moving toward safety. A rustle in the trees made Awinita's hand tighten around her knife, her heart racing as she shielded her daughters. She braced for a hunter, but a woman stepped out carrying a basket of herbs. It was Clara, a white schoolteacher from the reservation, her kind eyes softening as she recognized Awinita. Clara admitted she'd seen John's cruelty, his fists leaving marks. Awinita hid from the world. Awinita's voice cracked as she poured out her story, the beating, the escape, the fear of losing her girls. Clara's face paled, but she offered help, promising food and secrecy despite the risk to herself. Awinita hesitated, wary of trusting a white woman, but Clara's gentle touch on Nayeli's shoulder eased her doubts. The teacher vowed to return with supplies, her voice trembling with resolve. Awinita felt a spark of relief, her shoulders sagging as she thanked Clara, tears welling up. The forest, once a place of terror, now held a glimmer of kindness. As Clara vanished into the trees, Awinita held her daughters close, their warmth grounding her. For the first time in days, she dared to hope, but caution lingered, knowing trust could be a fragile thing. Clara sat with Awinita under the trees, her voice low as she spoke of William Baxter, the town's powerful land baron. She suspected he wanted Cherokee land, his visits to the reservation always shadowed by greed. Awinita's mind flashed to Baxter's cold smile, his polished boots striding through their community like he owned it. Clara whispered that the warrant for Awinita's arrest felt wrong too swift, as if someone wanted her silenced. She offered to contact a lawyer in the city, a man who might challenge the law's bias. Awinita's heart lifted, a fragile hope blooming, but distrust lingered. Could a white lawyer care about her plight? Clara's earnest eyes held promise, and she swore to return, with news slipping away through the forest. Awinita watched her go, her mind swirling with Baxter's name and the possibility of justice. She hugged Nayeli and Tayanita, their small hands anchoring her. The forest seemed less hostile now, but danger still loomed. Awinita prayed to her ancestors, asking for wisdom to navigate this new path. Clara's words had lit a spark, and though fear remained, Awinita clung to the chance of fighting back for her daughters and her people. Awinita's heart felt lighter as she shared Clara's plan with Tsegi, her voice soft with hope. "She'll find a lawyer," she said, picturing a future where her name might be cleared. Tsegi frowned, wary of white promises, but nodded, agreeing to wait for Clara's return. Nayeli curled up beside her, asked if they could go home soon. Her innocent question piercing Awinita's chest. She promised her daughters a safe place, her words a vow she prayed she could keep. To ease Tayanita's fears, Awinita sang a Cherokee lullaby, its gentle melody wrapping them in warmth. The forest outside seemed quieter, its shadows less threatening as they prepared for the next leg of their journey. Awinita watched her girls sleep, their peaceful faces reigniting her resolve. Clara's kindness had sparked a fragile dream of freedom, and Awinita clung to it, her fingers tracing the worn fabric of Nayeli's dress. She whispered thanks to her ancestors, feeling their strength in her bones. For the first time she dared to imagine a life beyond running, one where her daughters could laugh without fear. The cave felt like a cocoon holding them close, but Awinita knew they had to keep moving forward. A sharp yelp from a hunting dog shattered the morning calm, and Awinita's blood froze. A bounty hunter had found their trail, his heavy boots crunching near the stream. They'd crossed. Tsegi hissed for them to run, pointing toward the dense forest ahead. Awinita scooped up Tayanita, her heart pounding, and grabbed Nayeli's hand, their feet slipping on wet leaves as they fled. An arrow whizzed past, grazing a tree, its thud echoing like a warning drum. Awinita's lungs burned, but she pushed on her daughter's frightened gasps, driving her forward. They dove behind a massive boulder, crouching low, their breaths shallow as the hunter's lantern swung closer. Tsegi's eyes met hers, urging silence, and Awinita held her girls tight, praying the shadows would hide them. The hunter paused, cursing, then moved on, leaving a carved mark on a tree for his comrades. Awinita's body shook relief mixing with dread. The forest was alive with danger, and they were prey. Nayeli's small hand squeezed hers, a silent promise to stay strong. Awinita whispered a plea to her ancestors, her voice trembling. They had escaped, but the hunt was far from over. Tayanita's small body burned against Awinita's chest, her shivers turning to fevered tremors. Awinita pressed a hand to her daughter's forehead, panic rising as she felt the searing heat. She dipped a cloth in the stream's icy water, dabbing Tayanita's face, but the fever held tight. Nayeli's voice quavered, asking if her sister would die, her wide eyes brimming with tears. Awinita forced a calm smile, promising Tayanita would be fine, though fear clawed at her heart. Tsegi scoured the forest for herbs, returning with a few wilted leaves that offered little help. Awinita's hand shook as she tucked Tayanita closer, her mind racing with images of losing her youngest. She prayed to her ancestors, her voice a desperate whisper, begging for a miracle to save her child. The forest's silence felt cruel, indifferent to her pain. Awinita rocked Tayanita gently, humming a Cherokee song to soothe her, but each weak whimper cut deeper. Nayeli sat close, holding her sister's hand, her bravery a lifeline for Awinita. The weight of their survival pressed down, but Awinita refused to break. She would fight for Tayanita, for both her girls, no matter how dark the path ahead. Tsegi's face hardened as he heard the dog's barks closing in. "I'll lead them away," he said, his voice steady, despite the danger. He smeared mud on his face and left false tracks, leading away from the stream, drawing the hunter's attention. Awinita watched, her heart in her throat, as he vanished into the trees. A gunshot rang out, and Tsegi stumbled, blood seeping from his shoulder as he fell. Awinita stifled a cry, thinking he was gone, her chest tightening with guilt for pulling him into her fight. Tsegi, cunning and quick, rolled into dense bushes, playing dead as the hunters passed their lanterns, missing his hiding spot. Awinita's tears fell silently, believing she'd lost their protector. Nayeli, sensing her mother's despair, whispered that Tsegi was too strong to die. Her small voice, a spark of hope, Awinita clung to her daughters, the forest's shadows swallowing her grief. She blamed herself for Tsegi's sacrifice, each distant bark a reminder of the cost of their escape. Yet Nayeli's words echoed, urging her to believe in Tsegi's survival. Awinita vowed to honor his bravery, her resolve hardening. They had to keep moving for him and for her girls. Awinita's legs ached as she followed Tsegi's last directions, her arms heavy with Tayanita's fevered weight. Nayeli trudged beside her, her small steps determined. Despite exhaustion, they stumbled upon a hidden cave, its entrance cloaked by a cascading waterfall, a secret haven in the forest's heart. Awinita checked inside, finding it dry and safe, a fleeting sanctuary. She laid Tayanita on a makeshift bed of old blankets, her daughter's shallow breaths tearing at her soul. Nayeli gathered dry twigs, her hands trembling as she helped build a small fire. Its warmth, a faint comfort. Awinita's eyes caught a wooden box tucked in a corner, its carvings hinting at forgotten stories. She opened it, her curiosity piqued, but set it aside, her focus on Tayanita. The cave's quiet offered a moment to breathe, but Awinita's heart remained heavy with worry for Tsegi and her daughter's health. She hugged Nayeli, drawing strength from her resilience, and prayed to her ancestors for protection. The waterfall's steady roar masked their presence, a shield against the hunters. Awinita steeled herself, knowing this refuge was temporary. They would rest, but the fight for survival loomed as relentless as the forest itself. Awinita's fingers trembled as she pried open the dusty wooden box in the cave's corner, its hinges creaking like a warning. Inside lay a stack of yellowed papers. Their ink faded but legible. She read, her breath catching as the words revealed a chilling plan. William Baxter aimed to seize Cherokee land for oil, bribing officials to drive her people out. The documents named Baxter and his allies, their signatures. Sam Malone among them, exposing a plot to kill anyone who resisted. Awinita's heart pounded, shock turning to dread as she realized Baxter would stop at nothing, even murder, to keep this secret. Nayeli, stirring from sleep, asked what her mother was reading. Her voice small. Awinita hid the papers behind her, not ready to burden her daughter. Her mind raced. She had to expose Baxter, but how, when the world hunted her? She decided to keep the secret until they were safe, the weight of it pressing on her chest. Awinita prayed to her ancestors, her voice a whisper, begging for strength to fight this evil. The cave's dim light flickered, mirroring her flickering hope. The truth was a weapon, but wielding it could cost everything. She clutched the papers, her resolve hardening, for her daughters, for her people. She would find a way to bring Baxter down, no matter the danger. Awinita sat by the fire, the secret papers burning in her mind like a brand. She reread the documents, each word fueling her rage at Baxter's greed. The Cherokee land, sacred and hard-won, faced theft by a man who saw her people as obstacles. She remembered Baxter's smug visits to the reservation, his eyes cold as he surveyed their homes. Awinita's fists clenched her nails, digging into her palms as she imagined her daughter's future stolen. Nayeli noticed her mother's anger and hugged her, her small arms a quiet comfort. Awinita softened, telling a story of their ancestors' resilience, her voice steady to inspire hope. She vowed to fight for her community, to expose Baxter's crimes. The cave's shadows loomed, but her anger was a fire unyielding. Awinita planned to find someone to publish the truth, her mind racing with possibilities. Nayeli's trust strengthened her, a reminder of why she fought. Awinita's heart thumped with purpose. She would not let Baxter win. The forest outside whispered dangers, but her fury was louder, a call to protect her people. She kissed Nayeli's forehead, her resolve ironclad. This fight was bigger than her now, and she would carry it forward no matter the cost. Clara's footsteps echoed as she entered the cave, her basket heavy with bread and a vial of medicine. Awinita's tension eased, relief washing over her at the sight of her ally. Clara knelt beside Tayanita, giving her a dose to soothe her fever, her hands gentle but sure. She apologized, her voice low, explaining the city lawyer refused to help, cowed by Baxter's power. Awinita's heart sank, the sting of betrayal sharp. She'd hoped for justice, but the world seemed stacked against her. Clara promised to find another way, her eyes earnest, and they shared a simple meal, the bread, a small comfort. Awinita thanked her, her voice thick with gratitude, though worry gnawed at her. Tayanita's breathing steadied a flicker of hope, but the cave felt smaller, its walls closing in. Clara's presence was a lifeline, yet Awinita feared dragging her into danger. She hugged Nayeli, drawing strength from her daughter's warmth, and prayed for guidance. The waterfall's roar outside drowned her doubts, but not her fear. Clara's resolve bolstered her, a reminder that kindness endured. Awinita vowed to keep fighting, her heart torn between hope and the looming threat of Baxter's reach. Awinita sat alone by the cave's entrance, the waterfall's mist dampening her face. Her thoughts spiraled into darkness. The lawyer's refusal, a heavy blow. She cried silently, feeling powerless to protect Nayeli and Tayanita, their futures clouded by Baxter's shadow. Tayanita stirred, calling Mama in a weak voice, and Awinita rushed to her, promising never to give up. She stared at the cascading water, its endless fall mirroring her trapped despair. Nayeli slept nearby, her peaceful face a painful reminder of what Awinita fought for. The cave's cold stone pressed against her back, amplifying her sense of defeat. She prayed to her ancestors, her voice breaking, pleading for a sign to guide her. The weight of the secret papers hidden nearby felt like a chain. She knew the truth, but couldn't wield it. Awinita's tears fell, each one a silent surrender to fear, yet Nayeli's steady breathing anchored her, a faint call to endure. The forest beyond the waterfall held hunters ready to pounce, and Awinita felt like prey. Her heart ached, torn between love and hopelessness. She wiped her eyes, vowing to fight on, but the path ahead seemed impossibly steep, a mountain she wasn't sure she could climb. Nayeli's excited shout broke Awinita's gloom. "Mama, look!" she called, pointing to a narrow tunnel in the cave's wall. The girl had woken early, exploring while her mother grieved, and found a hidden path. Awinita's heart lifted, her despair pierced by Nayeli's discovery. She inspected the tunnel, its dark mouth leading to the forest, a possible escape from their trap. Awinita hugged Nayeli tightly, gratitude swelling as she thanked her brave daughter. She planned to leave at dawn, the tunnel their new hope, though danger still lurked outside, to keep their spirits high. Awinita told a Cherokee tale of a girl who found light in darkness, her voice warm with pride. Nayeli beamed her courage, a spark that reignited Awinita's own. The cave felt less like a prison, now its walls softened by possibility. Awinita prayed to her ancestors, her words steady, asking for protection on their next step. The waterfall's song seemed to cheer them on, a rhythm of resilience. Awinita held Nayeli's hand, her heart steadier. The tunnel was a risk, but also a chance. With her daughters by her side, Awinita felt ready to face the forest again, her hope fragile but growing. Awinita's heart raced as she led Nayeli and Tayanita through the forest, the tunnel's exit fading behind them. Dawn's light filtered through the trees when a stranger appeared, a man in a worn coat, his eyes sharp but kind. "I'm Thomas, a reporter," he said, his voice steady, claiming he was investigating William Baxter's crimes. Awinita hesitated, her hand on her knife, but his words stirred hope. She shared her story, her voice cracking as she spoke of John's abuse and the secret papers exposing Baxter's land. Thomas listened intently, promising to publish the documents if she entrusted them to him. Awinita's chest tightened. Could she risk giving the truth to a white man? Thomas revealed his own loss, his family ruined by Baxter's greed, his pain mirroring hers. Nayeli watched silently, her small hand in Awinita's, sensing the weight of the moment. Awinita prayed to her ancestors, seeking guidance, her heart torn between fear and the flicker of possibility. The forest stood quiet, as if holding its breath. Thomas's offer was a lifeline, but trust was a leap she wasn't sure she could make. She nodded slowly, hope battling caution, knowing this stranger could change everything for better or worse. Tsegi's return brought a shock, his shoulder bloodied, but his spirit unbroken. "Don't trust him," he warned, his eyes narrowing at Thomas, who stood nearby. Awinita's stomach churned, Tsegi's words rekindling her doubts. He whispered that Thomas might be Baxter's spy, his vague answers about his past fueling suspicion. Awinita recalled Tsegi's tales of betrayal, her trust in Thomas wavering. Nayeli tugged her sleeve, asking if Thomas was a friend, her innocent question sharpening Awinita's fear. She questioned Thomas, her voice firm, but his evasive replies about his sources deepened her unease. The forest's shadows seemed to close in each rustle, a warning of hidden threats. Awinita's mind raced. Had she been too quick to hope? She decided to test Thomas, her heart pounding with the risk. Tsegi nodded his grim approval, steadying her. Awinita prayed to her ancestors, her voice a silent plea for wisdom. The papers in her pouch felt heavier, a truth too dangerous to mishandle. Thomas's kind eyes now seemed like a mask, and Awinita's resolve hardened. She wouldn't let her daughter's future hinge on a mistake. The forest watched its silence, a challenge, as Awinita prepared to uncover the truth about their new ally. Awinita's hands shook as she scribbled a fake document, her heart pounding with the gamble. She handed it to Thomas, claiming it was Baxter's plan. Her voice steady despite her fear. Thomas read it, his face unreadable, and promised to publish it immediately, his eagerness raising Awinita's suspicions. She and Tsegi followed him secretly, slipping through the forest, their steps muffled by moss. Thomas reached a small inn, its lantern casting a warm glow, and met a man Awinita didn't recognize. Her breath caught had she misjudged him. But Thomas handed the man a letter, not the fake papers, and spoke of exposing Baxter, his voice fierce. Awinita's tension eased, relief flooding her as she realized he was contacting a newspaper. She whispered to Tsegi, admitting her mistake, and returned to the camp, her heart lighter. Facing Thomas, she apologized, her voice thick with gratitude, her trust in him restored. Nayeli smiled, sensing the shift, and Awinita hugged her, the forest's quiet, no longer menacing. She prayed to her ancestors, thanking them for clarity. Thomas's commitment was a beacon, but danger still loomed. Awinita clutched the real papers, ready to fight her hope, tempered by the trials ahead. Thomas's scream pierced the forest as Awinita watched horrified from the trees. He'd left the inn, the fake papers tucked away when Baxter's men ambushed him, their fists slamming him to the ground. They bound his hands, dragging him to a waiting wagon, his blood staining the dirt. Awinita's heart thundered, guilt crashing over her. She'd sent him into danger. She stumbled back to Tsegi and Clara, her voice breaking as she told them of Thomas's capture. Nayeli's eyes widened, her small voice asking if Thomas would die, and Awinita's chest ached, unable to answer. The forest's shadows deepened, each snap of a twig a threat. Awinita blamed herself. Her decision to trust Thomas now, a chain around her heart. Tsegi's grim nod urged action, and they began planning a rescue. Their whispers urgent, Clara's face paled, but she vowed to help her loyalty, a spark in the darkness. Awinita prayed to her ancestors, her voice desperate, begging for strength to save Thomas. The wagon's wheels faded into the night, taking their hope with it. Awinita's resolve hardened. She'd fight to free him, no matter the cost. The forest loomed a battlefield, but she wouldn't let Baxter win. Awinita's voice trembled with urgency as she gathered a small group of Cherokee in the cave, their faces lit by flickering firelight. "Thomas has the truth about Baxter," she said, explaining his capture and the secret papers. Tsegi proposed a bold plan to storm Baxter's warehouse, his eyes fierce with determination. Clara offered to spy in town, her voice steady despite her fear, promising to map the warehouse's guards. Nayeli, wide-eyed, begged to help, but Awinita knelt gently, refusing, her heart aching at her daughter's bravery. The group assigned tasks. Some would create diversions, others would free. Thomas Awinita prayed to her ancestors, her words, a fervent plea for success, the cave's damp air heavy with their shared resolve. They worked quickly, sharpening sticks and gathering stones, their whispers a chorus of defiance. Awinita's chest tightened with the weight of leading them, her fear for Thomas and her daughters driving her forward. The forest outside loomed a silent witness to their gamble. She hugged Nayeli and Tayanita, their warmth grounding her. This rescue was their chance to strike back at Baxter to reclaim their future. Awinita steeled herself, ready to face the danger, her heart pounding with purpose. A new figure stepped into the cave, and Awinita's breath caught. It was Martha, a Cherokee woman whose sharp eyes held a grudge. She accused Awinita of betraying their people by marrying John. Her words cutting deep, Awinita explained her fight against Baxter, her voice firm, pleading for unity to save Thomas. Martha's frown softened, and she agreed to join. Though her cold nod sparked unease in Awinita, Tsegi whispered a warning, urging caution about Martha's loyalty, his distrust mirroring Awinita's own. She needed every ally, but Martha's presence felt like a storm cloud. The group continued planning, but Awinita kept Martha at arm's length, sharing only what was necessary. Nayeli watched Martha warily, sensing the tension, and Awinita squeezed her hand, silently promising protection. She prayed to her ancestors, her heart heavy with doubt, asking for discernment. The cave's shadows seemed to shift, hiding secrets as dark as Martha's gaze. Awinita's hope for unity clashed with fear of betrayal, but she pressed on, knowing they couldn't turn back. The fight for Thomas, for their land, demanded trust, however fragile. She stood tall, her resolve tested but unbroken. The cave buzzed with quiet determination as the Cherokee gathered their faces, set with purpose. Awinita held up the secret papers, her voice steady as she revealed Baxter's plan to steal their land. The proof inked in cold betrayal. A young man questioned the documents, demanding more evidence, his skepticism a challenge. Tsegi stepped forward, recounting Baxter's past thefts, his voice raw with pain, swaying the group. Awinita called for unity to rescue Thomas, her words a rallying cry that ignited their spirits. They agreed to attack the warehouse at midnight, their plan a spark in the darkness. Martha stood silently, her eyes unreadable, making Awinita's stomach twist. She prayed to her ancestors, her voice a whisper, seeking strength for the fight ahead. The cave's walls seemed to hum with their shared resolve, a fragile hope binding them. Awinita hugged Nayeli, her daughter's trust fueling her courage. The group dispersed to prepare their footsteps, echoing like a war drum. Awinita felt the weight of their faith in her, her heart pounding with purpose. The forest waited a battlefield for their future, and she was ready to lead, despite the shadows of doubt cast by Martha's presence. Martha's absence hit Awinita like a blow. A Cherokee scout burst into the cave, panting, reporting that Martha had slipped away to meet Sheriff Malone. Awinita's heart sank, betrayal stinging as she learned Martha had revealed their plan for a handful of coins. Malone had promised her gold, and Martha, swayed by poverty, had sold their trust. Awinita's mind reeled, her hope shattered by the woman's treachery. The scout warned that Malone was rallying his militia, their boots already marching toward the cave. Awinita cursed her blindness, guilt gnawing at her for letting Martha near Nayeli's small voice, asked why Martha had turned against them, and Awinita's throat tightened, unable to answer. She prayed to her ancestors, her voice desperate, begging for a way to escape this trap. The cave, once a refuge, now felt like a cage, its walls closing in as Malone's forces neared. Awinita's hand shook, but she refused to break. She gathered Nayeli and Tayanita, her resolve hardening despite the betrayal. The forest outside whispered of danger, but Awinita vowed to protect her daughters and fight on. Martha's betrayal was a wound, but it wouldn't stop her. She'd find a way to survive. The cave echoed with the shouts of Malone's militia, their lanterns casting jagged shadows on the walls. Awinita grabbed Nayeli's hand and lifted Tayanita, racing toward the tunnel. Nayeli had found her heart pounding like a war drum. Tsegi stayed behind his figure, a defiant silhouette, hurling stones to slow the militia's advance. A bullet grazed Awinita's shoulder, the sharp pain making her stumble, but she pushed on her daughter's frightened cries, driving her. Nayeli sobbed, clutching her mother's dress, yet kept running, her small legs pumping. They squeezed into a narrow crevice, their breaths shallow, as boots thundered past. The militia's curses faded, but they left a guard at the tunnel's mouth, trapping Awinita inside. She held her girls close, their trembling bodies grounding her amid the chaos. The cave's darkness pressed in, amplifying her fear, but she whispered to her ancestors, pleading for deliverance. Tsegi's shouts grew distant, and Awinita prayed he'd survive. The crevice was a temporary shield, but the hunt was relentless. Awinita's shoulder throbbed, yet her resolve burned brighter. She'd escape this trap for Nayeli, for Tayanita, for the truth still clutched in her hands. Awinita's scream tore through the cave as Tsegi faced the militia, his voice a roar of defiance. He hurled stones, each one slowing the armed men charging toward the tunnel, his figure a lone shield for Awinita and her daughters. A gunshot rang out sharp and final, and Tsegi crumpled blood blooming across his chest. Awinita, hidden in the crevice, watched in horror, her cry muffled by her hand as tears streamed down her face. The militia checked his body, assuming him dead, and moved on their boots, echoing like a death knell. Nayeli clung to her mother, sobbing, and Awinita hugged her daughters, her heart shattered by the loss of the man who'd become their protector. Guilt consumed her. She'd pulled Tsegi into this fight, and now he was gone. She vowed to honor his sacrifice, her voice a broken whisper as she swore to fight on. The cave's darkness swallowed her grief, but Awinita's resolve burned through the pain. She prayed to her ancestors, begging them to guide Tsegi's spirit and strengthen her own. For Nayeli and Tayanita, she would carry his courage forward, no matter how heavy her heart. The militia's lanterns faded, but the fight was far from over. Awinita's shoulder burned from the graze of the bullet, but she pushed through the crevice. Nayeli's hand in hers, and Tayanita cradled close. The tunnel opened to the forest, its shadows a fleeting shield. She checked for pursuers, her breath shallow, the militia's shouts still echoing behind Nayeli. Tears streaking her face, asked about Tsegi, and Awinita's throat tightened as she said he'd given his life for them. Tayanita stirred her weak voice, calling Mama, and Awinita's heart ached, her daughter's fever, a constant fear. She found a dense thicket, its branches a makeshift hiding spot, and settled her girls there, their small bodies trembling. Awinita prayed to her ancestors, her voice a desperate plea for safety. The forest's silence, both a comfort and a threat. She planned to find Clara, their only ally now, to keep fighting for Thomas and the truth. The weight of Tsegi's death pressed on her, but Awinita's love for her daughters fueled her. She kissed their foreheads, whispering promises of a better tomorrow. The forest loomed alive with danger, but Awinita's will was stronger. She clutched the secret papers, her mission clear. She'd escape for Tsegi, for her girls, for justice. Clara's heart pounded as word of the cave attack reached her, the town buzzing with news of Tsegi's death. She stood in her small room, her hands shaking, resolve hardening like steel. She decided to confront Baxter's power to save Thomas and honor Awinita's fight. Disguising herself in a plain cloak, Clara slipped into Baxter's office at dusk, her pulse racing as she searched for clues. She found a key hidden in a drawer, its shape matching the warehouse where Thomas was held. A guard's shadow passed the window, and Clara froze, her breath catching narrowly, avoiding detection. She hid behind a bookshelf, her heart thumping, the musty smell of old ledgers grounding her. Clara prayed to the Cherokee spirits, a quiet plea for courage, knowing Awinita's trust rested on her. The office's silence was oppressive, each creak a threat, but Clara's determination burned bright. She pocketed the key, her hand steady despite her fear, and slipped out, the town's lights flickering like distant stars. Awinita's face flashed in her mind, a reminder of the stakes Clara vowed to act. Her fire eclipsed by a fierce need to fight for justice, ready to risk everything for her friend. Clara's hands trembled as she turned the key in the warehouse lock, the rusty door creaking open. Inside, Thomas lay slumped, bound and bruised, his face pale but his eyes alert. She whispered his name, cutting the ropes with a small knife, her fingers fumbling in haste. Thomas staggered to his feet, leaning on her, his voice weak but grateful. Footsteps echoed outside, a guard's heavy boots drawing near, and Clara's heart leapt to her throat. She pulled Thomas toward a back exit, her arm around him, their steps muffled by the dirt floor. The guard's shout rang out, spotting their shadows, and Clara's blood ran cold as he raised the alarm. They burst into the forest branches, clawing at their clothes. The guard's lantern swinging behind, Clara's lungs burned, but she urged Thomas on his weight, slowing their escape. She prayed to the Cherokee spirits, her voice a breathless plea, begging for safety. The forest's darkness swallowed them, their pursuers' shouts fading. Clara's relief was fleeting. Thomas was free, but danger still hunted them. She thought of Awinita, her courage, a beacon, and vowed to reunite with her to keep fighting. The night was alive with threats, but Clara ran on unyielding. Awinita's breath caught as Sheriff Malone stepped from the forest shadows, his pistol gleaming in the moonlight. She froze, clutching Nayeli and Tayanita, her heart pounding as he raised the gun but held his fire. His voice was gruff, demanding to know about the papers she carried. Awinita, her voice trembling but firm, revealed Baxter's plan to steal Cherokee land. Her words sharp with truth. Malone's eyes flickered, admitting he'd long suspected Baxter's corruption, his tone heavy with doubt. Awinita pleaded for his help, her desperation raw. Thinking of her daughter's future, Malone lowered his weapon, his face torn, and let her go, his silence a fragile promise. The forest's quiet pressed around them, its branches swaying like witnesses to their uneasy truce. Awinita prayed to her ancestors, her heart racing. Unsure if Malone's mercy was a trap, she hurried her girls away, their small hands anchoring her fear. Malone's hesitation was a crack in Baxter's armor, but trust was a risk she couldn't fully take. Her shoulder ached from the bullet graze, but her resolve burned brighter. She whispered thanks to her ancestors, vowing to keep fighting the forest, a maze of danger and fleeting hope. Malone's boots thudded through the town, his jaw set as he marched to Baxter's office. He confronted the land baron, his voice low but sharp, demanding answers about the secret papers. Baxter sneered, threatening to ruin Malone's career, his words dripping with arrogance. Malone's mind churned, Awinita's plea echoing, stirring his buried conscience. He recalled her fear, her daughter's faces, and the truth she carried. In the quiet of the night, he gathered evidence, letters, and ledgers hidden in Baxter's own files. His hand steady, despite the risk, Malone sent a message to Awinita through a trusted runner, promising to aid her, though he knew she'd doubt him. He stood alone, the town's lights dim, wrestling with his role in Baxter's schemes. Awinita's courage had shaken him, forcing him to choose between loyalty and justice. He prayed not to ancestors, but to a vague hope, asking for strength to right his wrongs. The evidence weighed heavy in his coat, a step toward redemption. Malone's heart pounded, He was betraying Baxter, risking everything. The forest beyond town whispered of Awinita's fight, and he vowed to join it, his decision, a spark in the darkness, fragile but growing. Awinita's heart lifted as she found Clara and Thomas in a forest, clearing their faces, weary but alive. Clara recounted Thomas's rescue, her voice soft with pride, and Thomas, bruised but determined, swore to send the papers to the press. Awinita handed him the real documents, her hands trembling, trusting his resolve. They planned to reveal Baxter's crimes at a town meeting, their whispers urgent under the trees. Clara hugged Awinita, promising to stand by her, her warmth a balm to Awinita's fears. Awinita prayed to her ancestors, her voice steady, asking for victory in their fight. Nayeli and Tayanita slept nearby, their peaceful breaths fueling her courage. The forest felt like an ally, now its shadows hiding their plot. Awinita's hope surged, tempered by the danger ahead. Baxter's power was vast, but their unity was stronger. She thought of Tsegi, his sacrifice, a fire in her heart, urging her to press on. Clara's eyes met hers, a silent vow of loyalty, and Thomas nodded, his pen a weapon. Awinita stood taller, her fear eclipsed by purpose. The town meeting loomed a battlefield for truth, and she was ready to face it with her allies by her side. Awinita's boots echoed on the wooden floor of Baxter's office, her heart thundering as she faced the man who'd haunted her nightmares. She held the papers high, her voice ringing with defiance, threatening to expose his land theft. Baxter laughed, cold and cruel, calling her a fugitive squaw, his words a venomous jab. He drew a pistol, its barrel glinting, aimed at her chest. Awinita stood firm, her fear buried beneath fury, recounting his crimes. The bribes, the murders, the betrayal of her people. Baxter's face twisted, and he ordered his guards to seize her, their boots scuffling closer. Awinita's shout for justice filled the room, a cry that shook the walls, her daughters' faces flashing in her mind. The office's air was thick with tension, the papers in her hand, a burning truth. She prayed to her ancestors, her voice, a silent roar begging for strength to survive. This moment, Baxter's gun steadied his finger on the trigger, and Awinita's breath hitched, knowing death was near. Yet her resolve held a fire unquenched by his power. The guards closed in, and the room pulsed with danger, a clash of truth against greed, with Awinita at its heart. The door to Baxter's office slammed open, and Awinita's heart stopped as John staggered in his face, twisted with rage. He pointed at her, his voice a venomous hiss, calling her a traitor who'd shamed him. Awinita's knees buckled, memories of his fists flooding back each bruise, a scar on her soul. She faced him, her voice steady, despite the pain, declaring he'd never control her again. John sneered, claiming she'd lose Nayeli and Tayanita forever, his words a knife to her heart. Awinita clenched her fists, vowing to protect her daughters, her fear drowned by defiance. Baxter nodded to his guards, signaling them to advance, their eyes. Cold, Awinita stood tall. The papers clutched tightly, her resolve a shield against John's hatred. She prayed to her ancestors, a silent cry for strength as the room pulsed with danger. John's presence was a wound reopened, but Awinita's love for her girls burned brighter. The guard's boots scraped closer, and Baxter's gun remained fixed on her. Her heart pounded, torn between past terrors and the fight for her future. The office was a battlefield, and Awinita was ready to face it, her spirit unbroken despite the ghosts of her past. Sheriff Malone burst through the door, his pistol aimed at Baxter, his voice a low growl ordering the guards to stand down. Awinita's breath caught hope surging as he revealed he'd gathered evidence of Baxter's crimes, ledgers and letters tucked in his coat. He commanded the guards to release Awinita. His authority shaking their loyalty, Baxter shouted, labeling, Malone a traitor, his face red with fury. Malone recounted Baxter's sins, the land theft and murders, his words heavy with guilt for his own past silence. Awinita felt a rush of relief standing beside Malone, her fear easing with his support. The guards hesitated their weapons, lowering caught between Baxter's power and Malone's truth. Awinita prayed to her ancestors, her heart racing, grateful for this unexpected ally. The office's air crackled with tension, Baxter's empire crumbling. Malone's eyes met hers, a silent promise of redemption, and Awinita nodded her trust in him, growing. The guards stepped back, their resolve faltering, and the room shifted, power tilting toward justice. Awinita clutched the papers, her daughters' faces in her mind, ready to see this fight through. Malone's stand was a turning point, and she wouldn't let it go to waste. A guard loyal to Baxter fired the gunshot, splitting the air, and chaos erupted in the office. Malone returned fire, his bullet striking the guard's shoulder, sending him crashing to the floor. Awinita dove behind a desk, pulling Nayeli and Tayanita close, her heart pounding as bullets flew. A stray shot grazed her hair, the heat searing her scalp, but she shielded her daughters, their terrified whimpers cutting through the noise. Malone tackled Baxter, pinning him to the ground, his strength overpowering the Baron's rage. Malone's men stormed in, their rifles raised, subduing the remaining guards in a flurry of shouts and clattering weapons. Awinita held her girls, whispering they were safe, her voice trembling but firm. She thanked Malone, her eyes wet with gratitude as he handcuffed Baxter, the room falling silent. The office was a wreck, papers scattered, blood staining the floor. Awinita prayed to her ancestors, her relief tempered by the violence she'd witnessed. The fight had been brutal, but they'd won this battle. She stood, her daughters clinging to her, her resolve unbroken. The truth was still hers to wield, and Baxter's defeat was only the beginning. Thomas limped into the city's newspaper office, his bruises aching but his spirit fierce. He handed the secret papers to the editor, a stern man whose eyes widened at the evidence of Baxter's crimes. The press prepared a front-page story, typewriters clacking as the truth took shape. Thomas spoke of Awinita's courage, his voice thick with admiration, her fight inspiring every word. The editor promised the article would run at dawn, its words a blow to Baxter's empire. Thomas sent a note to Awinita scrawled on scrap paper, assuring her the truth would soon be free. Awinita, hiding in the forest, received the message, tears of joy falling as she read it. She prayed to her ancestors, her heart swelling with hope, knowing Baxter's downfall was near. The newspaper office buzzed the story, a fire spreading through the city. Thomas thought of Awinita's daughters, their faces a reminder of why he fought. The editor shook his hand, vowing to stand by the truth. Awinita's sacrifice, Tsegi's death all led to this moment. The forest outside whispered of change, and Thomas felt the weight of victory, bittersweet but powerful. The papers were their weapon, and the world would soon know Awinita's truth. Baxter's boots slipped on the muddy forest path as he fled his office. His breath ragged in the cold night air, he climbed into a waiting wagon, urging the horses forward, desperation etched on his face. Malone, alerted by a guard's shout, rallied his men, their lanterns bobbing as they pursued. A group of Cherokee, led by a young warrior, blocked the trail, their eyes fierce with resolve. Baxter pleaded, offering gold for his freedom, his voice shrill, but the Cherokee ignored him. Their anger a silent storm, a warrior tossed a rope, binding Baxter's wrists, his empire crumbling with each knot. Malone arrived, his voice firm, declaring Baxter under arrest for his crimes against the Cherokee. Awinita watched from the trees, her heart soaring as Baxter's head bowed in defeat. She prayed to her ancestors, gratitude warming her chest, knowing their land was safe. The forest seemed to cheer its branches, swaying in victory. Awinita's relief was profound, though Tsegi's absence ached. She held the secret papers, their truth now a beacon. Baxter's capture was justice, but the fight had cost dearly. Awinita stood taller, ready to face what came next, her daughter's future, brighter in the moonlight. Awinita faced John in the town square. His hands cuffed his eyes hollow as Malone's men held him. He muttered an apology, his voice weak, but Awinita's gaze was steel, unmoved by his regret. She spoke of his years of abuse, each bruise a chain she'd broken, her voice steady with reclaimed power. She declared her freedom, vowing to live for Nayeli and Tayanita, her words a shield against his cruelty. John's head hung, his defiance gone, as the crowd watched in silence. Malone's men led him away, his footsteps fading a ghost of her past. Awinita's heart pounded her honor, restored the weight of shame lifted. She prayed to her ancestors, thanking them for her strength. Their presence, a quiet comfort. The square's lanterns flickered, casting light on her victory. Awinita thought of her daughters, their love her anchor, and felt whole. For the first time, the town, once a place of fear, now held promise. She stood tall, her spirit unbroken, ready to build a new life. John's shadow was gone, and Awinita's voice, once silenced, now echoed with purpose, a testament to her resilience. In the face of pain, Clara led Nayeli and Tayanita to a quiet cabin, its warmth a haven after the forest's dangers. Nayeli, her eyes bright, recounted her mother's bravery, her small voice filled with pride. Tayanita, her fever gone, giggled for the first time in days, her laughter a melody to Clara's ears. Clara hugged them, promising to keep them safe, her heart full as she watched their smiles. Awinita arrived, her face softening as she saw her daughters, and they ran to her, their embrace, a burst of joy. They shared a warm meal, the cabin's fire crackling its glow, chasing away the night's chill. Awinita felt hope bloom her daughter's laughter, a promise of better days. She prayed to her ancestors, her voice soft, thanking them for this moment of peace. The cabin was a sanctuary, its walls holding their love. Awinita kissed Nayeli and Tayanita. Their trust, her strength, Clara's kindness had carried them through, and Awinita's gratitude was boundless. The forest outside was silent, no longer a threat. Awinita's heart swelled the future within reach. Her daughters were safe, and that was enough for now. A light in the darkness of their long fight. Martha's footsteps were heavy as she approached Awinita. Her eyes downcast, filled with shame. She confessed her betrayal, her voice breaking, explaining how poverty drove her to take Malone's gold. Awinita listened, her heart torn between anger and pity. The sting of Martha's actions still raw. She forgave Martha, her voice firm, but demanded she make amends by helping their people. Martha nodded, tears falling, promising to rebuild the community she'd harmed. Awinita embraced her, a gesture of mercy, her compassion stronger than her pain. They prayed together, their voices blending, asking for peace for the Cherokee. Awinita felt a weight lift, though. Tsegi's loss lingered, a reminder of the cost of trust. The forest's quiet held a new promise, one of healing. Martha's regret was sincere, and Awinita's forgiveness a bridge to unity. She thought of Nayeli and Tayanita, their future tied to this fragile peace. The community needed them all, and Awinita's heart softened, ready to move forward. Martha's vow to help was a step toward redemption, and Awinita held on to it, knowing forgiveness was strength, even when it hurt. The morning sun rose over the town, and the newspaper hit the streets, its bold headline exposing Baxter's crimes to a stunned populace. Baxter stood in chains, led to the courthouse, his once proud face hollow as he faced a trial for land theft and murder. The Cherokee gathered at the reservation, their voices raised in song, celebrating the victory with a ceremony that echoed through the hills. Awinita spoke of Tsegi's sacrifice, her voice thick with grief, honoring the warrior who gave his life for their cause. The community hailed her as a hero, their cheers warming her heart, though she felt the weight of their losses. Malone approached, his head bowed. apologizing for his role in past wrongs, his sincerity, a step toward healing. Awinita felt justice settle like a long-awaited rain, her ancestors' presence strong in the wind. She prayed her words a quiet thanks for the truth that freed her people. The reservation buzzed with hope, children laughing, elders smiling. Awinita stood among them, her daughter's hands in hers, knowing their land was safe. The fight had been fierce, but their unity had prevailed, a testament to their resilience. The future shone brighter, a promise kept to those who'd fought. Awinita walked through a new Cherokee village, her heart full, as she settled into a small home with Nayeli and Tayanita. She taught her daughters Cherokee stories, their laughter weaving traditions into their new life. Awinita opened a modest sewing shop, her needle steady, earning enough to stand on her own. Tsegi's memory lingered a quiet ache, but his sacrifice gave her strength, his courage, a light in her soul. The Cherokee honored Awinita, calling her a symbol of resilience. Their pride, a warmth she carried daily. She watched Nayeli and Tayanita play their joy, a balm to her scars, and felt peace settle in her bones. Awinita prayed to her ancestors, promising to live for her community, her voice steady with purpose. The village thrived, its fields green, its people united. Awinita's heart swelled, knowing they'd fought for this freedom. The forest beyond whispered of battles won, and she smiled her daughter's laughter, the sweetest victory. The pain of the past remained, but so did hope, a future built on love and sacrifice. Awinita stood tall, her journey a story of endurance, etched in the hearts of her people, a legacy for Nayeli and Tayanita to carry forward.